Well, all right, here we are back at the bench. Lovely summer day. Well, it's lovely if you like 90-degree plus temps. I do not. So I decided to make a video. I'm actually doing a bunch of videos on Arkansas stones, and this one here is probably the last one, although I might show it first. Don't know yet. There might be one more after this. I can't really make up my mind because, you know, the world of arcs is let me get these penguins out of the way, by the way, so I don't knock them over. Actually, I gave them a little bath and clean them up a little bit so they're a little less, you know, funky looking, so they're digging that. Anyway, so I got this pile of arcs out. The world of arcs is so full of confusion, and it's compounded by like tons of bullshit being spewed by people who, like, you know, they buy a stone or two and now they've gone to they've developed expertitis. You know, we all know the people. They own two stones and they're like, they know where to buy them, they know everything about them, they can quote chapter, line, and verse on particle size. Meanwhile, they're actually, you know, many of them are essentially clueless, because these are really complex stones. They're very simple, but they're very complex. Using them is complex. Understanding them is complex. The stone itself is, well, these are the hard arcs, by the way. The other videos that I'm doing, one on Washita, some on softies, you know, those are standalone, but they all speak to this because all these stones are related. Now, Arkansas stones, obviously, they come from Arkansas. What are they made out of? Well, the material that, like this stone, like for example, we would call this novaculite. Flinty, cherty type of silica composed of micro and cryptocrystalline silica particles. And that all sounds like Gucci, and people start hearing that stuff and they're like, oh my God, microcrystalline, this shit must be so fine. Particles in here are like 10 micron. It puts you to about 1400 grit on a standard scale. Maybe a little higher or lower on another scale. But you see here, in this world, the concept of grit that we know from, you know, your standard synthetic stones, it doesn't apply. This is a completely different ball of wax. Remove the concept of grit, please, because it just gets in the way. All right. So the reason for that is because this is a fixed matrix. It's not really a matrix. It's just like, you know, if you want to like pretend a little bit, it's like a whole bunch of silica crystals just all mashed together, but it's all solid. Okay, it's not like this is going to dissolve under pressure and release new particles, and no, not like that at all. So the abrasive becomes kind of fixed, and it's at one point it's very sharp and pointy, and another point it gets dull, and then you have different surface finishes which affect a different type of polish on different types of steel, given different types of honing mediums, combined with different types of tactics, or, you know, skill sets behind it, you know, the application on a stone, how you're using it, you know. So basically, if you push down really hard, it works one way. If you don't push down at all, it works a completely different way. Different honing mediums afford you different friction coefficients. Different steels behave differently. And last but not least, you have variations upon the theme known as novaculite. So you have like a variety of stones. Now, these stones are kind of big. My bench top for the camera is not too big, so I have these out here, and I'm going to try and go through a bunch of them, but I don't want to like overwhelm people with, like, you know, 400 different stones. I don't have 400 arcs. I do have about 40 or 50 of them. Okay, and this is a bunch that I've taken out because they speak to the project, this video. So basically, let me move some stuff out of the way here a little bit. You're probably wondering what the hell this is. Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. Well, just so you know about me and arcs. The arcs were my first stones. Long ago, I had arcs. When I was a kid, I had some arcs. They were little. They were stupid for me. They just were like, you know, something that I sharpened with. We had one bench stone in the basement and a piece of, it was like 2 2x4s. My dad routed out the sides. Well, the sides, you know, the flat surfaces, so the stone sat in it. And then he routed out the other side, and that became the cover. And it was this big blocky thing that was like huge and ugly and oil soaked. And we used that. That's what we sharpened stuff with. It's hunting knives, kitchen knives, everything. We had one stone for everything. That was it. And we worked it until we got the best edge possible, and we live with it. Now, here, 2019, the entire world is trying to outdo one another with how fine their edge is. They're thinning blades, they're thinning steel, they're trying to create razor edges on kitchen knives. They're damn, you can almost see through the freaking steel, but you can do some like really fine cut work with that. It's not for naught, but I'm just drawing a picture. As I got older, I wanted to get it more into cooking. I bought some... I had some cutlery. It turned out to be crap, but it looked good in the store. But it turned out to be crap. A sharpening fellow in New York City, downtown, he did a really good job. Everybody went to him. All types of chefs went to him. He was at a shop called Westfalls, downtown. He was a great guy. The shop was very helpful. I went in there, I talked to him about my knife and my sharpening exploits, and basically explained to me the knife was a piece of crap. The stones I had were not on point. I needed bigger stones and better stones, blah, blah, blah. So what I did was I got on the phone. I started calling people down in Arkansas. I had a magazine for cutlery or something, and I was calling these ads in the back. And I found some guy who... really sat down and explained to me what was going on with stones, with Arkansas stones, and I convinced him to cut me two 10x3 stones. This is one of them. This is my surgical black arc. I know that term bothers some people. It is a little ambiguous. Basically, surgical black means that the stone is in the upper tier of density amongst all Arkansas stones. Soft stones are less dense. Some hard stones are in the middle. The hardest stones are at the top so far as density goes. The density speaks to the amount of silica in the stone. So if you have a very dense stone, it has more silica. It cuts slower, it cuts finer. If you have a soft stone, it's less dense, has less silica, and it's coarser. You know, outside of that, you have Washita, which are the softest. You don't find them anymore. So it's Washita, soft, hard, and then this top tier. Now, at one time, there was only soft and hard. Things were a lot easier back then. But as people started to like isolate that some of the hards were better than some of the other hards, you know, if you think about it, you have a dividing line in the middle. So a hard stone over here and a soft stone over here, but anything that's close to the line is going to be very similar to anything on just on the other side of the line. So you have shades of gray. So people were looking for the tippy top. They were looking for the stone that was all the way down here in that sector. Something that became a marketing point, and it made sense, and it is true. It's not just marketing, was translucency, right? Now, there's a translucent arc. It's a butterscotch. People make a big deal out of butterscotch. Personally, I think the majority of stones that have this color because there's a minute bit of oil that's worked its way into the stone and it just gets reflected out. If you look at this, it's just a piece of that. You can see the cut marks are paler. If I hit them with oil, they get yellower. I know for a fact that this stone, when I soaked it in simple green, it became less yellow, more white, and then oiling it to work with it with oil made it more yellow. Are there stones that are actually butterscotch through and through? Maybe, possibly, don't know, don't care. I'm not convinced that this stone is any better than any other translucent because of its color. It may be better than another translucent because it has smaller particles and more of them, but the color I do not think has anything to do with it. So, anyway, let me move that out of the way. So I had two stones cut for me. This is one of them. That was back then. I've had this forever, like since the 80s or so, and this is my favorite stone because I've had it that long. Is it the best stone I own? I don't know what to tell you. I own very good edges on this. I do very, very well. I do not think I would get a better edge off of this translucent than I do off of here. Which one has the highest specific gravity? I don't know, and I don't care. And this is what I'd like to tell you. People get like caught up in all of this stuff. They want to measure their stones and dunk them in water and calculate specific gravity and then get online and argue about it. You know, there are these stones being sold out of Canada. They're being sold as Novaculate. And I'm going to do a video on them soon. But the seller of those stones claims very high specific gravities, higher than what's quoted for Novaculate. So let's just say Novaculate 2.7 or Arkansas stones 2.7. He's claiming like, I don't know, 2.85. I'm not making the numbers up. He's just saying it's like a notch higher. Then a bunch of people online, you know, the experts, they said that can't happen because it can't be because quartz is only whatever 2.79, so it can't be higher than that. Well, it can be higher than that because if you have an inclusion in your stone, let's say you have a vein of hematite running through it, which is very possible with Novaculate or any other quartz type of thing, a microcrystalline quartz, you could very well have hematite in the area or running through the stones. Hematite specific gravity is like, I don't know, 10, 11. So if you have a vein of it in there, it's going to blow your specific gravity through the roof. So you take the science with a grain of salt at some levels. It's just another thing to like add into it, you know, into the mix of figuring your stone out. I mean, you don't ignore the science. Science is what it is, but you know, you list everything and then you figure it all out in the end. Me, I'm like, just go and get a stone, buy it from a reputable seller, enjoy the stone, do the best you can with it. Chances are the stone is capable of an edge that's finer than you're capable of making. I'm sorry, but that's, when you get to this level stone, yeah, these things are like light years ahead of the person behind the wheel. So anyway, so I have this stone, you know, so that's that. And, you know, there's a ton of other stones out there on the market, and everyone wants to know which one's better, which one's best, who to go to. People will tell you, oh, I know so-and-so has the best stones. They have all the 2 purchases under their belt, and then they're running around telling everybody everything they know. You know, you got to have a lot of stones. You have to have a lot of experience. You can't just say with a broad sweeping stroke that seller XYZ has the best stones, because it's bullshit. All right. So anyway, back in the day, they were hard. See, it says hard. It's an old Norton, by the way, probably 1950s. But it's a black, right? But I think you can see there's a little tiny bit of translucency in there. I'm trying to make sure the bezel is back from the edge. But you can see it, little tiny bit, right? So this is a black stone. It's a hard, but it has a little bit of translucency. Chances are, if you had a similar sized stone that had no translucency, chances are that this would actually have a higher concentration of silica in it. What does it mean? At the end of the day, not a whole lot, you know. This is a phenomenal stone. I notice I've had a whole bunch of these in my life, and these are killer. Whether they transmit a ton of light or a minimal amount of light, they're still way beyond our needs for finishing a razor. You get to the point of diminishing returns where you can't tell anymore which is better. Not objectively. You can talk about it, but you really have no way to prove it. All right, so you have that. Another stone, right? This. Now, this is Norton. It says Bear, but it doesn't say Bear Manning. So Bear Manning was phased out in 55, 56. The marketing supplies stayed around for until the 60s, I think. I don't know, something like that. That's what I read. This has no mention of Bear Manning, so definitely 60s, because I don't think they kept the Bear brand through the entire 10-year period known as the 60s. Anyway, see this one has a little bit of a polish on it, a little bit more than usual for me, like, say, this one. See, I'm not really picking up the overheads. This is how I normally keep stuff. I don't I don't subscribe to what people call burnishing. I and the rest of the world call that glazing. This is borderline glaze, but there's still enough of the nap in the surface. This is a killer stone. Most people who want a razor hone would just die to own this stone. This is such a lovely piece of Arkansas stone. There is some translucency here, but less there. Show it here. Little tiny bit, but not much. Okay. Overall, the difference between the black and white portion of this stone effectively is nothing. Okay. Translucency would have been created, is created by the silica particles of particular silica particles of, without any impurities, right? But I can tell you from honing on here that this is just like an amazing rock to work on. Okay, I keep threatening to sell it, but because I don't use them that much. I don't need to have like a ton of Arkansas stones, but that's an amazing stone. Now, move that out of the way. Back to this, translucent, high concentration of silica, very fine edges, razor edges off of this are just absolutely amazing. Be hard pressed to say objectively that you're getting better edges off of anything, really. It's just would be too hard to prove. So anyway, before I showed you some things that were piled up on my bench. The world of hard arcs. This is a hard arc. And so is this. Okay? Neither of these are in this class. But they're both called hard. When you go to buy them, they will be listed as hard. This one is a little closer to soft, so it's less dense, less fine. This one is a little closer to the top tier, the true hard, the translucent, the surgical black. It's a little closer to that, but not quite. Okay, these are both 8x3s. They're 1 inch thick. They're amazing. They do a great job. But you have to be aware of what's out there, because you can't just say, oh, I have a hard arc. Because hard means a lot of things. It starts at one point where it's not technically soft, and then it goes all the way up to this class. There are people who call black arcs surgical black arc without it being in that top class. There are sellers on the internet, there are sellers on eBay selling stones they call black arcs surgical blacks. They're not. I bought 1 or 2. I sent them back. They're not in that class. They're not that fine. They're not that hard. Now, this, right, this is an amazing thing. You know, I like to have benchmark stones around so I can like do comparative testing. And when I give people my opinion, I like to make sure that I'm not doing it based on like 2 stones. Now, this here is a new old stock Norton piece, HIB 27. The H is hard, the I is India, the B is box, and the 2-7 is 2x7. Now, the thing is, this was set up differently. There's no India. The India would be the India stone. What this is one side is a translucent and the other side is a black. This is a killer black. This is absolutely a killer black. This is just an amazing black. This is the tip top of the hard arcs. It may very well be as hard as a translucent. Oh, and that's one thing about this particular setup is the actual mechanics of this box are a little questionable. It's almost like they designed this thing to be owned by a guy who has one of those garages that has all the tools but nobody does any work. So I have it because I like it. I don't really use this. If I want to use the stone and do a comparison, what I do is I just take the stone out. I guess I didn't tighten it down enough the last time. But you can see it's just pressure fit. Anyway, these are benchmark stones for me. If I want to compare to other stones and I want a vintage, you know, this is 1950s. This is Bear Manning. Very vintage arc I want to compare. I have one right here. You know, that's my benchmark stone. You know, people have a tendency to talk and start talking about, you know, oh, vintage this, modern that. Yeah, I don't know what they're basing their opinions on. You got to show me sample size. You got to show me valid examples of what you're using for comparison. You just can't talk. Talk is cheap, man. So anyway, so that's that. Those 2 bench stones. Here's another comparator, but this one I actually use. I hate this box. God, do I hate this box. But anyway, here you go. Norton 8x3, hard translucent, right? Modern stone. 8x3 by a half, not my favorite size, but big enough to get the job done. Comes in this stupid box. I hate it. But I'll point out that, you know, in the world of arcs, you hear guys talk about the old stones, vintage. I keep bringing up people referencing vintage. People say vintage is better. Well, that may be true. It may not be true. It depends on really. You just can't say that and have it be absolutely true. Old arcs, Washitas, they're gone. So yeah, those, you don't even have a modern comparison. Anything sold today as Washita that's new is probably a soft arc. Two completely different types of stone. Now, the soft arcs to me are the key to the system. But that's another story. Here you have modern and vintage. Butterscotch. And then you have pure white. If you read the old geological manuals, they'll talk about the pure white stone being like pinnacle. Those are from the 1890s, by the way. So there's that. But anyway, these two stones, both are translucent. Both were Norton. This wasn't Norton, by the way. There was a shred of a label on it at one time. Anyway, they're not exactly the same. If you put a loop on them, you can see a little bit of a difference. There's a patterning in the white that's not present here. This is more of a, I dare say, there's no pattern. The structure of the stone is more continuous. Okay, here there's like sort of a variation, almost a pebbling pattern. Not a pebble you can touch, you can't feel it. It's just you can see it. So, which of these two are better? Which of these two stones do you think gives me better straight razor edges? It's up for grabs. And that includes the surgical black and everything else. These are all, you know, you're in that tier. Getting crazy over whether or not you have a brand new Norton, a brand new translucent from, you know, naturalwhetstones.com, a vintage Norton, that's a butterscotch, okay, or something else, and don't make yourself crazy. They're all top flight stones. They really are, okay? It's a great stone, but, you know, I can home back and forth. I can use them simultaneously. It's not gonna be better or worse on either side there, not at all. It's just not happening. All right, so you have that. You know, the thing with the butterscotch kind of drives me nuts because people are like trying to drive the prices up on stuff or something, and they're all talking about how good a butterscotch is compared to like something else. It's all bull dinky, man. Sorry, it just is. Color, not so much of an effect, if any, probably not, none at all. Stone to stone, differences in crystal and structure, how big are the particles, how tight are the particles, what's the particle density, and how uniform are the particles from start to finish. Those are the scientific facts that are going to make a stone different, not the color. Forget the color, okay? There are black stones that aren't surgicals. They're just regular. There are black stones sold as arcs that aren't even novaculite. There are black surgical stones that are supposedly the best thing since sliced bread. And here's one of them. This is a Hall's Pro Edge from back in the day. Maybe 80s. Hall started in the 70s. I think they threw in the towel, I don't know, 2012, 2013, something like that. And it's recently been bought out and being run under a new person as R.H. Prater. All right, so here you have this black, surgical black, great stone, wonderful stone. Has the movement in it like my big surgical black. This to me is surgical black. Stones that are just black and don't have this movement, they're not the same to me. They're in the same class, they do the same job. I just don't call them surgical blacks. Okay, that's just me. All right. This is a comparison stone. I have unfinished sides and unpolished parts and polished parts, so I can sort of determine like visually if one stone is similar to another by comparing it to this. Great stone, very high end. There was a gentleman on the internet who did a comparison of a surgical black. I don't know the stone or where he got it or how many examples he had. The sample size is everything in science. If you're just going to test one thing, you haven't tested anything. But he did one, and he did a translucent, and he did them side by side. And his finding was that the translucent has less impurities than these. That this was just a more pure stone. He alluded to the fact that people might like these better because they were a little bit easier to hone on. I don't know that they're a little easier to hone on. I don't really find that to be true, but somebody else might. And if a stone is easier to hone on, your work is probably going to be better, so that makes perfect sense. The reasoning about it being easier to hone on had to do with the impurities and the stone being a little softer and blah, 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 blah. I don't know, man. It sounded to me like the guy did like started a test, but he didn't like really finish. All right, so that's a nice surgical black arc. All right, there's another thing around here. Ah, here we go. Yes, we got this baby here, and I got this baby here. This one's from R.H. Prater. I got this from Oscar. He sent it to me. We had a discussion about Arkansas stones. I called him to ask about Dunstans, actually, because I wanted to clear that up because I didn't understand. I had read some stories and I wasn't clear, and he explained Dunstans for him are not novaculate. These are the top dog. These are his black surgicals. This is a killer stone. Has a little bit of patterning in it. The edges are a little darker than the rest. Comes in this nice silicone boot, which I find to be like a little useful. I would be happy honing without it, but I think it's kind of cool that he packs his stuff that way. Great, 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 great stone. This one is from Dan's. I don't know. The box is around here someplace. I honestly, here's the bottom. I just don't know where the top went. This must be it. My bench is a wreck. Yep, there you go. Dan's, right? I wanted to make sure you understood I wasn't trying to pull a fast one. It is, in fact, Dan's. And, okay, so this is Dan's ultrafine black. This is Prater's surgical black. These two stones are so nearly identical that it's not funny. In the dark, I can't tell the difference between the two of them, and I'm the one who lapped both of them, and I'm the one who finished lap both of them, and outside of the dimensions, they feel the same. I bought a stone from somebody called the Black Translucent. It's a modern stone. Same stone, okay? Out of all of them, I would give the nod, I think, to the thicker stone because it's thicker, but for performance, they all are identical to me, and like, even though I'm not really the biggest fan of half-inch thick stones, which is the one Oscar gave me, and I'm really grateful that he sent this to me to give it a test. I just normally pick 1-inch stones. It doesn't matter. This is great, and I think what's really cool is I think I've decided to make this a travel stone. You know, so there's that. So it's a little lighter, and I can throw it in my kit. I might get another type of, like a sleeve or something to toss it in there. So there's that. But great stone, surgical black, and Dan's Ultra Fine. Now, if you go on Dan's and you buy the Ultra Fine, and you say, well, I heard translucents were better, and then you look at his translucents. Now, try and pretend for a minute that this is from Dan's. It's not, okay? But I don't have a Dan's translucent here. His translucents cost more than his ultrafines, but he calls the black ultrafines, and he calls these extra fine. So it's a little confusing, and out of all the variations in nomenclature and grit numbers and everything else that goes on, this particular part is a little upsetting because it doesn't make any sense to me. Not picking on Dan's. Solid company, start to finish, quarry. They mine, they cut, they polish, they box, they have great customer service, they sell a great product. Same with Prater, obviously. All right? It's just that the information becomes confusing, and I'll tell you why. It's not Dan's fault. It's the internet. Everybody has to assign a number to everything. They got to, this is 10, this is 11, this, stop, okay? You're sharpening steel. Get over it. You're rubbing steel on a rock. Stop with all of the hoopla. Okay? So, all of that other stuff aside, you know, you look back, you're like, why is it ultra fine if the other is extra fine? Isn't ultra better than extra? And so on and so forth. You know, I don't want to get too much further down the road with this, but just know that if you buy this or you buy a translucent, your edges are going to rock. If you bought a translucent from Natural Whetstones, it's going to be as good as anybody else's translucent, provided the stones have the same translucency and the same amount of silica and the same structure and the same density, the same consistency. Stone to stone, you can always have variations, but in a very general sense, when you start looking at different people's stones, you can't say that the translucent from this particular coordinate in Arkansas is better than the one from this geographical coordinate. Not like a blanket statement. On any given day, one stone might be marginally better than another, though. So you give it a shot. The thing is, the difference is going to be so marginal that you're not even going to notice, man. You're just not. You know, so you have those differences to deal with and factor into your purchasing and your understanding. I hope I've cleared up some of the misconceptions out there. I know a whole bunch of people are going to be pissed off. A couple of things that people ask me about. Do you use slurry on an Arkansas stone? No, I never do that. Why? Because the slurry, this is not a slurry stone, it's a test stone. Because the slurry from this stuff does not break down. The silica particles are essentially not friable. So the slurry isn't going to get finer. You're not going to have a finer result. Basically, what you're going to do is create a sawtooth edge. This is not what you want. Okay, these stones work best with a lubricant on top, straight, no slurry. If you have a washita and you have to like move crazy amount of steel, maybe on that, or soft, maybe, but just to get it kick-started. But for finishing, no slurry. Okay, just no slurry. I do not use slurry from Coticals or from J-Nats or from Makawanagur or anything else on these stones either. Those other slurry stones require the assigned base stone. Like, here's a little tiny piece of a J-Nat that I've used as a slurry stone. If I put slurry from it on this stone, it will do something, but it won't do what I want it to do, because this is not a J-Nat. What I want is this matched to a J-Nat. If you want to experiment, fine, but I take it from me, your best efforts with a J-Nat slurry stone, a Tomo Nagura, is going to be on a J-Nat. It's just the way it is. Anyway, back to this. I hone with oil or water and glycerin or water and soap. I like to use this, which is my Tomo Glide, because it's water soluble, it's all natural, blah, 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 blah. And it rinses up easy. And it really doesn't give me, my skin absorbs it, and I don't smell like machine oil, which I hate the smell of machine oil in the house. I love it when I'm outside, but in here I don't want to smell that. So anyway, so for honing on these things, you know, if you're going to hone, honing on an arc is a different world. And the reason I don't use them so very much is because they're dead. They're dead under the steel. These are not feedback machines, right? There's some wispiness. So basically, what I do is I put a layer of whatever down, whatever lubricant, whatever medium I'm going to use, and you do like a gazillion laps. You don't count. Counting is a waste of time. When you think it feels different, check. After doing this hundreds of times, you kind of get a feel for it. There will be a change in how the blade glides. There will be a change in the audible and how it sounds. This is that crappy gold dollar I told you about. If I want to see like major improvement in the shavability of this edge, I'm going to have to go back to what you would effectively call like a synthetic like A10K and then go forward, that would give me a notable improvement. I could doctor it up on a 12K and go forward from there. I could go on a JNAD and do, you know, Majiro Komatomo. That would do it, you know. But here, this is capable of a touch-up, but not that much work behind it. So that's the thing you have to know about these arcs. What you can do about that is you can keep the other side polished more than this, but less than that. And then you have basically two stones to work with. Not exactly, but you get the idea. Or you can just get yourself a very hard arc, like that black one I showed you before. And that's pretty nice. Now, the other thing about arcs, if people buy a black arc, then they call it a surgical black arc because it's black, and that's wrong. Because there are black arcs that are not in that upper class. So that's something to remember. Okay, staying away from confusion and being accurate and experiencing the fruits of your labor with these stones, you really have to know what's going on. And there are a ton of people out there and sellers that are calling regular black hard arcs surgical black when they aren't in that class at all. Okay, you know, that's why if you do go to Dan's or you go to Prada, you know, and you buy a surgical black from them or an ultrafine from Dan's, you know, you're getting that stone. You're in that zone, so you know that for sure. All right. Some guy on an auction site, who knows? No way to know. The other thing is there are hard arcs out there, and like I said, there are people calling them surgical, but there's an Arkansas stone, and actually Oscar at Prada, he told me about him because I asked him about his hard arcs, and he explained to me that that hard arc, that's not the surgical, it's not novaculite, that's the Dunstan Stone. Because I asked him specifically about the Dunstan Stone because I know there was some drama about it on the internet. So the Dunstan Stone that Prada sells is not novaculite. Oscar described it as being kind of like a slate. It's probably like an indurated slate, sort of like a Zulu. And I know people fawn over Zulus, but I don't. All right. And I think the Dunstan Arkansas stone, and I think maybe he should not call it an Arkansas stone, but it's in Arkansas, so I get it. But the confusion with novaculite is causing some people problems, and then it opened up a door for a seller to call a Dunstan stone a surgical black because he calls every black a surgical. See, what happened is, and you got people who bought them thinking, whoa, what's going on? Then that guy's getting advice from people who are like, oh, that should be a finisher, when it's like, no, it's not a finisher. Okay, no, it isn't. Okay, it's way down the pike from that top class of finishing arc. Okay, so there's that. Now, is every stone mined in Dunstan not Nevada? I don't know. I'm not there. My conversation with Oscar started because I know this because I talked to people at Halls a long time ago. Okay. This stone, this is what and my big one, this to me is a surgical black. This is my classification for that, okay? See how it's got that movement in it? You can see like the white and the flecks and the stuff like that. That's an indicator, not a pure 100% indicator. But when I see that, I think I'm onto something, and then I have to hone test it. But that's what I call a surgical black. And I knew from talking to Halls that stone, that particular stone, that type of stone was only coming out of one quarry down there in Arkansas, and the name of the quarry was Fancy Hill. So I asked Oscar if they were still mining at Fancy Hill, and he said yes, and he was mining a similar stone from other places, but I didn't get into whether or not he had this particular stone because I didn't want to tie the guy up. To be honest, he was very helpful, and I didn't want to keep hitting him with questions. I didn't want to make him feel like he was like on the spot. You know, we were just two guys talking stones. So Anyway, so be careful about that Dunstan thing. Ask questions. Yeah, you know, you see a stone that says Dunstan, ask the seller, is that an evacuate? You know, I've seen stones cut by Prater being sold on an auction site, being sold as surgical black when they are actually a Dunstan stone. I can tell by the catalog numbers. So there's a lot of bullshit out there, okay? A lot of bullshit. So you got to know your sellers. You got to know that your sellers are credible and accountable and conversant in what they're selling. All right, you got it, because otherwise you can wind up with anything. You know, I think I'm going to turn the one Oscar gave me. Where'd it go? I don't know. It's lost. It's here on the bench somewhere. I think I'm going to turn that into a travel finishing arc. Just take with me when I go upstate or something like that. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this one from Dan's. You'll see some use, but I mean, I don't use arcs frequently, so it becomes like, when am I going to use it? You know, a bunch of my arcs, I'm going to sell them. I'm kind of like overrun with them. I need floor space back. I literally I have a box. It's a very large box, and it's full of vintage Nortons and all kinds of stuff, and I got a clean house. But I'm going to keep a couple of, this one from Prater, the one from Oscar, yeah, I'm keeping that. That's going to be like travel stone. I might do something about the box, which is very nice, but it's a little bulky. But anyway, that's fine. Anyhow, listen, that's my spiel about hard arcs, okay? Apologize there wasn't a lot of honing, but this really wasn't a honing video. It's a stone video. Now, the stones are hones, but most of this stuff you have to experience yourself. I can't really hone and show you much. You know what I'm saying? I have to tell you what I know based on the, you know, education and the research that I've done. You know, I have a book on geological study of stones from Arkansas. I read it. I actually internalize the stuff there. I talk to people who are mining the stones all the time. So I just wanted to share that stuff with you, because I go on forums and I'm on the internet and I'm in Facebook groups or whatever, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, man? But anyway, so as always, remember, all of this is just about having fun. It's summertime. You should be out with the family in the parks and the beach and the streams and in boats and doing all that good stuff. But take some time for yourself. Come home at night or take a couple hours whenever. Sit down, get a razor out, get your hone out, get your Zen on, put a nice edge, get a nice shave. Makes everything worthwhile. Anyway, until next time, take care. Talk to you soon.